I think we're live. I see the live sign. Hi, I'm Kyle. Welcome to MedCircle. Welcome to our YouTube channel and happy Mental Health Month. You may be familiar with all or some of the incredible psychologists and psychiatrists we bring you every week right here and on medcircle.com to our paying members. But you may have not met yet Dr. Kristy Lamb, psychiatrist out of Southern California and the CEO of Bold Health. Dr. Lamb has a lot of specialties, but we love to bring her on to talk about anxiety. And the point of this will be for you to get to know Dr. Lamb and also get some of your questions answered by her as well. Dr. Lamb, welcome to our YouTube channel.
Thanks so much for having me, Kyle. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm really excited to get to viewer questions, but I'm going to ask you to start with your anxiety triangle, because I think it's just a great place to start any of these mental health related discussions. So what is the anxiety triangle?
Sure. So often when I'm talking to people about anxiety, I will orient them to what I call our roadmap in regard to mental health. And this roadmap is really just basically a triangle that throughout 15 years of practice, I have seen over and over and over again. I was introduced to it through psychotherapy training. It's called the Triangle of Conflict and was originated by psychiatrist David Mallon out of the UK, who took some of Freud's principles and work with short-term therapy to really see how are humans operating and how do we understand anxiety in the body and what brings it about. To me, understanding this triangle was so transformative because it did give me a roadmap as opposed to thinking anxiety just comes out of nowhere, like lightning strikes. I don't know why it came. I don't know what's going to get rid of it. Orienting to an understanding of what might be going on really helped me ground into the notion that I could maybe do something about it if I understood what was going on. So we look at anxiety as a physiological experience in the body, that it's not our thoughts, it's the physical experiences of a racing heart, of tight chest. Some people get higher levels of anxiety where they get stomach upset or nausea, or might even feel kind of disconnected from their bodies, foggy-headed or ringing ears, really high levels of anxiety. And we noticed through lots and lots of clinical cases and observing videotape that this anxiety comes in most commonly over complex mixed feelings that we have about things that are going on in our relationships and in our lives. And that when we really take a careful and curious and especially compassionate look at the origins of our anxiety and when it's coming up, it's almost always in situation. If I get in conflict with my husband, I'm going to have feelings that come up. This is the bottom part of the triangle, feelings. I often have learned that feelings aren't okay. So instead of feeling, I get anxious. Anxiety feels really uncomfortable in our bodies. So then we often do things to avoid that anxiety. So this is where our bodies may unconsciously dump into depression. We may attack ourselves. We may avoid. We may go to drugs and alcohol to numb. We may have a panic attack that pulls us further away from this conflict and from the original stimulus. But when we can start to see our anxiety, first and foremost, notice, wow, I'm really anxious, and then be able to orient to our bodies, regulate, often we can step back and get clear. What was it that was driving this? What happened when this started? Oh, wow. Yeah, I was having some mixed feelings towards my husband. I love him. This is making me angry. I'm not allowed to have anger towards him, and I got anxious. The more that I can allow myself to have the feelings that I have, adjust to the fact that every human is going to bring up complex mixed feelings in relationship, and tolerate those feelings inside my body, the less anxious I have to be. So this trial really helped me orient if I can work my way back to say, what was going on that spiked this anxiety? What do I have to work with here?
You know, I've heard this explanation of the triangle of conflict a few times from you, and I got something different from this explanation that I haven't gotten before, which is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm wrong often, Dr. Lamb.
Myself as well.
If it's almost like I have the choice to choose what I'm going to feel. am I going to feel anger towards this person, or am I going to feel anxiety about this situation? The anxiety, though, just can go through this loop and never gets resolved, where the anger gives us a pathway towards resolution.
You got it. Yeah. And I think that choice is really important. I want to make sure that no one in the audience would ever think that when we talk about choice, that we would say, well, clearly you've just been choosing to get anxious, so it's your own damn fault. Right? That we would never, if you don't know this pathway, if you haven't learned to attune to your body, these things happen unconsciously. You may not even know that you're angry. Right. And so then that's the work, the internal work of starting to see, okay, can I see this? Can I slow this process down when I'm really anxious? Right. If I'm attacking myself with, self-attacking thoughts and ruminations, can I come to my body, regulate my anxiety and get clear? Like, oh gosh, I don't know what's going on, but I am so anxious right now. Well, when did it start? What was going on? What was I feeling? And so then if I can work myself back, first and foremost, regulate the anxiety so I can even think straight to do this, then I have the opportunity to allow myself to really feel what I feel, which, as you know, right, I'm a huge proponent of equal opportunity feeling, that it's not just about feeling joy and happiness, that health is feeling all of our feelings deeply, and that it's information. Because if I'm having anger towards someone, it lets me know there's something that this person is doing that is pushing me away or is having me want to set a boundary. And that's useful information. I can bring that to the relationship and I can move towards healthy action. If I don't allow that, if I'm not allowed to feel certain feelings, then I'm likely going to live with a lot of anxiety.
Dr. Lamb has a great workshop that she's putting on for MedCircle members it might have been your request, Dr. Lamb. I don't remember exactly how we came up with it, but it's all about why anger is a gift or how we can use anger as a gift. So If you're not a MedCircle member, now would be a great time to become one. Yes, for Dr. Lamb's workshop, but also because it is Mental Health Month and you can get a major discount, but that's only available for a few more days during May. So go to medcircle.com. All the information's there. I'm not going to try to sell to you. Either you want to join us for the workshop or you don't. Okay. And either way is fine. We'll see you here on YouTube regardless. Okay. Question for Dr. Kristy Lamb. What truly inspired you to become a psychiatrist in the first place? Was it an organic decision from a young age, or did you consider an alternative career path? Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, great. I appreciate the question and curiosity about my path. My path was a bit kind of convoluted. I went to college thinking I was going to become an attorney. I was a poli-sci major, and that lasted about 3 days. I went to my first poli-sci class and was not super interested in it. Realized that was something that, because I like to talk and banter about things, that people had told me I would be good at, but I really didn't have an interest in it in the way that I did science. And so I actually first went into philosophy, was interested in how we learn to operate, how we understand how to live, how we operate with other humans. And so I got a minor in philosophy, but that led me in undergrad to move towards psychology. I was very interested then in, okay, how does this actually translate, these philosophical thoughts, how does that translate into our actions and our behaviors? Where do things go awry, where we can have dysfunction? And then I started to come back to that science interest and actually ended up as a neuroscience major, trying to get to the biological root cause. I spent a year as a ski bum, actually, living on peanut butter and jelly in Colorado before going to get a master's in philosophy. I'm still kind of looking at the human condition. And so I think I've just always been very curious about how we operate, how we relate with others, what a good life is and what that means in order to feel fulfilled. Kind of the existential questions I've always been curious about. I went to medical school thinking that I would probably do a lot of mental health, but was also interested in underserved care. So I went to a combined residency in family medicine and psychiatry. And worked primarily in the jails and in homeless shelters, again, looking at the human condition from a physical aspect and from a mental health aspect. And it was in residency that I learned about psychotherapy and really just fell in love with helping people get clear about what they're feeling, and seeing that this was kind of, to me, one of the most important things that I could offer was helping people get clear about who they are, what they feel, and how they want to operate in the world. And so feel so fortunate to be able to work in mental health and to be able to do this work every day.
All right. Well, let me ask the philosopher then. I'm not even going to ask you what the meaning of life is. I'm going to ask you, what question should we be asking ourselves to ponder that would most serve us?
I like the way you switched that. Yeah, I think it really is an individualized decision, and that no no surprise that the shrink would go to feelings and say,
Yeah.
I think that what can be really helpful is for us to look in and get clear what makes me feel the best, the most fulfilled, the most connected to who I am as an individual, the most alive. And for different people, that's really different things. But when we know this is a good thing for me to be doing, and then we know in our bodies and we feel driven towards something, a sense of meaning and purpose, that's really where I think things really align for people. And often things start to fall in place and they're moving towards what they really want in life.
Yeah, actually, yesterday I did a workshop with Dr. Judy, another one of our doctors, and during the workshop we had to draw all these circles that interjected, and it talked. Goodness gracious! And it talked about how finding what we're really good at, what we can do to make a living, what's in line with our values and our purpose, what's involved with our mission, having all these things come together to have this more healthy work. We're talking about work, mental health in the workplace. And it was very similar to what you just said. You also, people have asked me, what's the best thing that ever happened to you in a therapy session? And I have a few of them, but one of them was a very similar question my therapist asked me after months of feeling like I was getting nowhere. She said, well, when was the last time you just no, she goes, when are you happiest? Tell me what you're doing when you're happiest. Let's just start there. And I told her, and it revealed all of this stuff that had gone on. And I even looked at her and said, you must think you're pretty clever, don't you, Mrs. Therapist? You know, because she nailed it. She just nailed it. And it was a very similar question to what you were asking. Let's go to a viewer question, please, Bridget. Bridget's on here. MedCircle producer. Give a shout out to Bridget in the comment section. Ricardo Rodriguez is asking, how do I teach my son to feel the anger the correct way? What a good question, Ricardo. That's not what most parents would ask, I think.
Definitely. Absolutely. And first and foremost, I want to say, Ricardo, you're already off to the races with parenting. The fact that you want your child to be able to feel deeply and to feel anger in the healthiest way. Many of us were raised that anger was a problem, that we should just avoid it, that we shouldn't be angry. And so just the fact that you're asking the question, and bravo as a parent to say, how do I do this in the best way for my child? And I think often with children, it is a great way for us to think about, okay, what would I want for my child? I think there is no necessarily right or wrong way, but the definition of a feeling can be really helpful when we're thinking about these concepts. And that is that a feeling is physiological information and stimuli in your body for you. So anger is heat in the chest. It's a clenched jaw. It's a furrowed brow. It's fists, right? So it's a feeling, it's muscular activation. It is not an action. So allowing ourselves and our children to be able to feel our anger deeply without having to do anything with it is really important. To validate the fact that you're angry. Yeah, what do you notice in your body that lets you know that you're angry? We don't want to encourage acting out. No yelling, no kicking, no punching, no biting. Now, there may be an impulse, right? Those hands come like this because there's an impulse to punch or bite or kick. But the idea of being able to cultivate space to be able to hold this feeling inside without shutting it down, acting like it's not there, where often can dump into depression and self-attack, right? It has to go somewhere. If we create a container to say this feeling is more than allowed, we welcome it, it's information. And then once it's in our bodies, we can get clear what it's about. So yeah, what is it that's making you so angry? I really wanted a cookie. Absolutely. It's tough to not get what you want. I can see that that makes you really angry. With our youngest child, I have a 4-year-old. And so often being able to reroute her toward anger has been incredibly helpful in stopping tantrums. That my daughter, when she gets angry, would collapse on the ground and was often saying, I'm a bad girl, and saying things like this. Said, I think Zadie, I think you're actually angry towards mommy. Try this on. Can you say, I'm angry, mommy? And she would sit up and she'd say, I'm angry. I said, yeah, what are you angry? You wouldn't let me have a cookie. Yes, that's right. You're angry because I wouldn't let you have a cookie. So as opposed to I'm a bad girl for asking for a cookie, I shouldn't get angry. Of course you're angry. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to give her the cookie before dinner. We can talk about it. Well, your body needs protein and other foods before we're about to have dinner. Let's think about, see how you feel after you have dinner. Maybe we can have a cookie after dinner. We can talk through once their brains are back online, and first and foremost, just letting that feeling be there, and then we can understand it. So letting the feeling be present in a contained and welcome space means they don't have to shut it down. They don't have to get anxious. They don't have to turn it back on themselves. It can be physically in the body. It's, I often make the correlation to hunger, right? Hunger feels like mouth watering, stomach grumbling, right? It's not eating a donut. So I'm not encouraging people to kick or bite or punch, but can I feel the sensations of anger that let me know this feeling is here?
Yeah. Well, and feeling and actionable behavior are different things.
Totally
Um,
different.
what about I'm not a parent, but what about the parent who heard all that and said, okay, that's fine. But when my kid is crying or throwing a tantrum because they're not getting a cookie, I just go, yeah, because we don't always get what we want. Move on with the day. We don't have to turn this into like what some would perceive as a coddling session.
Right. And so, are there times when, especially when I'm like, all right, I get in the car, that I might be a little bit more short and curt and say, yeah, absolutely. It's really frustrating when you can't get what you want. And right now you can't get what you want and we need to get in the car.
Yeah.
I will always recommend validating the feeling, because the feeling is never a problem. Our kids are going to be angry. They're going to be sad. So the
good.
feeling is not a problem. And it doesn't mean that we have to change the situation. I can be angry and it can be okay. And by just having that feeling, I don't have to collapse. I don't have to get anxious. So yeah, I think that there is a fine line as well of spending, having home therapy sessions, right? To talk through the feelings and the rage and all those kinds of things. And so the first step might be just identifying the word that, yeah, you're angry and that's okay. And we still have to go. So you're allowed to be angry and let's get in the car. So we can move things a little bit more quickly. And if someone is interested in really cultivating this, it means being able to create the space for someone to play around with what it means to feel these feelings in our bodies. And let's be clear that not all of that shutdown is based on being socialized to shut it down. We actually have attachment wiring in our bodies to connect with those that we love. And so even if anger is validated in my 4-year-old, I've been saying, you're angry because your diapers, I've been like validating anger since she was born. I know.
What a sight.
She's gonna have her own issues with she tells me, she's like, Mom, enough with the feelings. Right. But even if it's highly validated, there is something protective that, about the connection with our parents that says anger is not okay. It's not okay to reject this person who provides me with food, clothing, and shelter. So we're wired to kind of shut this in. So it takes creating a space for it to be safe and okay, and to not have to turn it back on yourself. That's really, really important for our children and for ourselves.
That wiring, incredible insight. Man, I can't see the comments right now on YouTube, but I want to see what people are getting from this. So leave a comment in the live chat or if you're watching this on replay, leave a comment because I'll go back and read them. This is really fabulous. It's making me think I should interact with my nephew, because he's 4 and I'm not a parent, but I'm there for a week at a time or something. Okay, let's go to this question from Cascade. I can hear myself, Bridget. I don't know if that's on your end or something. But can we go to that question again from Cascade, please? Hopefully we can. Hello. No, we're going to Donna. Donna, sorry, Cascade. Hello, Dr. Lamb. I am suffering from very high anxious thoughts. Yes, I know it's situational, but nothing helps, not even Klonopin. I, too, work in the mental health field as a peer support specialist. So no question here, but what insight do you have for Miss Donna?
So the thing that comes to mind when people have anxiety that nothing is working is that I always recommend going to the body. And there are lots of reasons why this can be really hard and why sometimes it doesn't work. And it's not the physiology. So what I mean by that is that the breath work that we can learn to do, the guided meditations, the physical activation that can help bring down our anxiety, depending on what level of anxiety that we're in, will work physiologically if you are in a calm, compassionate, and curious space. If you have a bully yelling in your ear, and I talk about this a lot, of if noticing your anxiety brings in an inner monologue that says, oh my gosh, I'm crazy. Oh my gosh, anxiety's here. It's only going to get worse. Oh my gosh, why are you so anxious? This megaphone of criticism, of self-doubt will impede all efforts at physiological regulation. So I would suggest first, come to physiology. Can I notice if I push away from my thoughts and I really try and focus on my body, where am I noticing the anxiety physically? If my shoulders are up in my ears, can I take care of myself and compassionately lower them? If my breath is restricted, can I take a deep breath? Can I learn some breath techniques? But if that's not working, there is likely a bully in the room. And so we have to identify that bully and separate from the bully. Just noticing it allows us to see there's something going on here that's attacking me, that's not letting me regulate my anxiety. And we have to take a firm stand to say, I'm not going to get into a battle of wills here. I am not going to engage with this bully. I'm going to let the bully know that it's okay. It's okay for me to look at my body. It's okay for me to regulate. And that this bully is often trying to protect us because I was working with somebody just recently who had a lot of medical trauma, and looking at her body was highly anxiety provoking. And so we had to let her nervous system kind of know it's okay to look, and we can do this gently. It doesn't have to be an invasive thing to pay attention to our bodies, to notice what's coming up. And so if we don't address and identify this bully inside, it's going to be really hard to regulate. So I would recommend, to this statement, the notion of looking in to see, how do you treat you around your anxiety? Would you like to try speaking to you in a way that you might speak to a loved one, a friend, about anxiety? Because so often when we really take a look, we are doing that with ourselves. We're amping ourselves up more, whether through attack or neglect or catastrophizing. And this is root cause that if we don't get rid of this, if we don't work on this, the anxiety regulation techniques that we're trying to use won't work.
Fabulously explained, Dr. Lamb. Let's go right into Cascade's question. Dr. Lamb, my question is, with bully females in HR, I feel like they can literally ruin my life. What are your thoughts aside from self-employment? Because I need to earn money to invest in that first.
So it sounds like there's been some really difficult situations. If I'm hearing I may be extrapolating that more than is there in the question, but it sounds like there's been some real difficulty within a work environment and navigating HR, navigating other people. And so when these issues come up in the workplace, it is really important, first and foremost, to get clear what your perception of what is going on. Get clear Is there any part of what is going on that I may be telling myself a story and not have all the data? And can I gather all the data to know what's really going on? And then before taking any action, once I know what's going on and I'm clear what is the stimulus or the trigger to all the feelings that might be coming up, it's to take a look at these feelings, to get clear how you're feeling about what's going on in this environment so that you can then potentially address it head on. Now, should that not be available to you, part of our work in holding feelings, not discharging them out and not dismissing them, is that sometimes these feelings come up and there isn't anything we can do. We're in a situation where we kind of have to, for better or worse, kind of suck it up in regard to certain situations. And we have to get clear, how much can I tolerate? And, what is acceptable to me to be able to say, okay, this person has their stuff, or this HR department does this every single time, and I can feel my anger about it and I can operate within that. When our anger, when we take a really good look at what we're feeling, it's going to let us know, yeah, this is untenable. This is a situation where these acts or this situation is egregious and I need to leave. And it sounds like there may be a sense that leaving is the option, or the only option. But I would always recommend to somebody to first and foremost get all facts. Make sure you're really clear. What is it that's going on? What is it that isn't working for me? What is it that feels like an attack or an unsafe environment? Question, is there any part of my own story that I'm creating that may not be fully teased out with the facts? And gather data so that this is the actual situation. And then assess, what is it that I'm feeling about this? Is this anger that is intolerable? This is egregious and I need to leave? Or, wow, this really makes me upset and this is how they're operating and I can operate within this. If that's not the case, then yeah, it means that sometimes we have to go outside of a specific system and create an environment that feels safe for you. That's not always, financially viable for everyone, but I think that being able to first assess, is that the only option, is really important. And that means gathering data, getting clear if there's any kind of projections or stories that are being laid. And believe me, all of us, myself included, can tell ourselves a story and then have a lot of feelings about that story that may not be accurate. So it's useful to gather your data, get clear how you feel about the environment and whether it's a tenable situation, and then start to plan if there's any way to make changes within the current environment versus having to leave and create something different.
Yeah, really great. Bridget, if we have another question, please throw it up there on the screen. If we don't, Dr. Lamb, what feelings, if any, would you feel that we don't have to acknowledge or validate, or does that not exist?
Yeah, I'd suggest that doesn't exist.
Okay.
If we think about feelings biologically, similar to any sensation that comes up in our body. So if I start to feel hungry, if I have to go to the bathroom, if I'm about to sneeze, right? All of these sensations that come up in our body tell us about something that's going on for us that we can then intervene for. So if I'm really hungry, I might need to go eat. If my bladder is full and I can sense that, I might need to go to the bathroom. If I'm feeling anger, it means emotionally in relationship, there's something going on that's not okay. And then I may need to set a boundary. I may need to leave. I may need to ask for something specific.
Yeah, I get that. So, but what about what if I'm livid with my spouse, but I got to hop on YouTube right now and do this interview? So I can acknowledge my anger. I guess that is the validation, but I can't deal with it right now. I got to push it down and get on with this.
Yeah. And so great point. And so if we come back to our triangle of conflict, right, the idea that if we have strong feelings, we don't allow, or any feelings that we don't allow, it often translates into anxiety. And then we can go to defenses that can be really destructive. We can dump into depression. We can numb with drugs and alcohol. Not all defenses are bad. None is really bad, right? A glass of wine may not be a problem for someone. 3 bottles of wine may cause a lot of problems. And so choosing specific defenses like compartmentalization can be really important.
Mm.
So we have to compartmentalize. It's not like we can necessarily like deeply feel everything that we're feeling at every moment in the day.
Thank
The
goodness for
issue
me.
is if we habitually don't feel and if we don't have choice in the matter, right? So ideally, if you had a fight with your partner and you need to get on YouTube, you're going to say, I'm pissed, but I'm going to take a deep breath and I will deal with this later. And we do the things, and even saying that, right? And even, right, it's not even my right analogy, but I can feel my chest get kind of tight, right? There's a sense of like, I got to shore up
Yeah.
and show up. And sometimes we have to do that, and that's okay. And that can be adaptive. It doesn't change the fact that you're angry and that there's still something that might need to be dealt with your partner at a later time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, as always. Bridget, do we have another question, please? Just a question is asking, what can I do if personal questions make me really anxious? I had an adverse medical experience as a kid. Personal questions make me feel like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah, great question. And I think that for better or worse, this is really common for people who have had any kind of medical trauma, absolutely, and physical trauma, sexual trauma, neglect, that there are parts of our lives where it feels like it's not okay. It's not okay to be who I am, to have been through what I've been through. And we can at times um, then push down the story of our lives and try to
Mhm.
keep a front up that says, and again, this is I'm not saying you're fronting in any way, right? But that we put up a protective wall that says it's not okay to come behind here because when anybody's been behind here in the past, it's been painful. It's caused
Mhm.
problems. And so I think that's something to really look at, to be able to see how much do I want to let people know, and owning the fact that no one can get any information out of you that you don't tell them. And so there's something very empowering about remembering that. I've had patients come in, in a first session and say, I don't know what you're going to try and get out of me. And I was like, oh gosh, first and foremost, I don't need to get anything out of you. And I don't have any right to ask you about anything that you don't want to talk about. And the good news is I can't read your mind. So anything that you don't want to talk about is fair game to keep outside, that you get to decide. And so that sense of empowerment can be really helpful to say, when someone asks you a question, you 100% get to decide how much you don't share. And sometimes that in and of itself can be calming. And
Yeah.
then being able to look at, underneath that, do I want to connect? Do I want to be seen? And so often when we don't, it's because there's been some trauma in the past, and that gets generalized that everyone that I open up to, it could potentially hurt me. And it's
Mhm.
true. We as humans can really hurt each other. And yet, if we operate in a way that we don't slowly open the door to see if it's safe, we end up feeling really alone and isolated and kind of closed off. So it's a real personal decision to decide, how much do I want to open up? And can I give myself permission to try this on, to see what it's like to let people in a little bit?
Mhm.
And then maybe even to close the door. Again, mostly to regain that sense of agency that says, I am in control of how much people know and don't know, and I can share or not share. And that's up to me, that I get to decide.
Yeah. There's a reoccurring phrase that's I hear a lot in discussions around mental health, and it's some version of so and so makes me feel X, Y, and Z. You make me so angry. You make me feel so bad about myself. And I understand what they're communicating. They're saying, when I had this interaction with this person, I got really angry or became angry. But when they say you make me feel, I always think, well, they didn't make you feel that way. They didn't force it. They might have been the antecedent, but they were
Yep.
not they didn't say, now you better be angry with me, right? So I have found a lot of power in myself, just changing the narrative in my head of going, oh my gosh, the people in my building just really make me frustrated, to the people in my building, when I interact with them, when I leave that interaction, I'm always really frustrated, and it
It's
gives me
huge.
ownership.
Absolutely. It sounds like a matter of semantics of just like word choice, but it really does make a difference because we're talking about, like you said, agency, the sense of ownership that says, I can respond any way that I want. And I think part of this conversation is also about feeling versus action and what I then do with it, right? So if people in your building do specific things that stimulate a feeling inside you, you're going to have anger towards them. That's your anger towards them. And it's going to come up whether you want it to or not, right? Your amygdala fires before you have any conscious awareness. You notice the sensation. It's like, ugh, so annoying, right? Then you get to decide what to do with it. If they make me angry, to some extent, can be putting myself in a one down, helpless position that these people have this power over me, not only to elicit a feeling, but then to ruin my whole day or make me, I yelled because they made me so angry. If they didn't do these things, I wouldn't be so angry. No. They do what they do. I have feelings that come up inside of me, and then I get to decide how I then want to operate.
Yeah. Great. Another awesome class, workshop, interview, discussion, whatever you want to call this, Dr. Lamb. Really fabulous. Thank you so much. Give Dr. Lamb some love in the comment section. I'll go back and read them, even if she doesn't. It's always such a pleasure to have you on here. And it is Mental Health Month. And tonight we're having a panel with some of our featured doctors. So if you are interested in joining that panel, Bridget, is that panel will be open to the public? Yes. Oh, Bridget might be muted. We'll put yes, MedCircle says it is. So it'll be right here on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe right here, and so you don't miss it. I'll see you all in a few hours. And Dr. Lamb, thank you again for everything.
Thanks so much for having me, Kyle. Always.
Remember, y'all, whatever you're going through, you got this.